Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us for this very special presentation, of course.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So again, we're very lucky to be able to present your film, for our audience. So I'll do a special kind of introduction, and then we'll dive right into it.
Cool.
Obviously, feel free to correct me at any point if anything might be off course, but I think I'll have the details pinned down. So thank you again for joining us for the special presentation that we're holding on the platform in honor of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is taking place on January 27th of this year. So we're recording this just a few days ahead of this event. Zoom Rockman is a London-based award-winning political cartoonist, illustrator, and filmmaker. Survivor, the true story of Ivor Perl, is his first feature-length film, correct?
Yes.
Fantastic, and it's quite a selection, for your first feature film, and we're going to dive right into that. I just wanted to give our audience just a tidbit, an introduction to Ivor's story, which is beautifully portrayed in your film before we dive into our conversation. So Ivor Perl was born in Hungary in 1932. He was only 12 years old when he was deported to the infamous Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. Out of a family of 9, Ivor and his older brother Alec are the only ones to have survived the camps. After the war, Ivor and Alec spent some time in the displaced persons camp before gaining a passage to the UK, where Ivor has made his life. Thankfully, Ivor is still going strong at 94 years old, living in London. And Zoom will tell us a bit more about their connection as well. And again, this is beautifully represented in your film. So I will turn the microphone over to you so you can tell us just a little bit about where the idea for the film came from and why you chose this particular story.
Well, I think the beginning of it all started in summer of 2023. I've been working as a cartoonist. I've been working since I was 8 years old. But I had an exhibition in London at a place called JW3, which is the Jewish sort of arts and cultural centre here. And it was called Zoom Rockman's Jewish Hall of Fame. And it was portraits I'd done of Jewish celebrities who were British and international ones as well. But they basically organized for Holocaust survivors from the Survivor Centre in London to come and visit my exhibition. And a group of them came. And I was kind of faced with this dilemma that I'd drawn all these portraits of celebrities, but then I was meeting these incredible people. And I actually felt that maybe these people were more deserving of portraits of them. So I offered to do some portraits of the people who gave their consent to have portraits done of them. And what I did was 2 weeks later, I came into the Survivor Centre with printed off portraits of some of these people. And that's where I met Ivor Perl for the very first time. A lot of these survivors who were on this little tour group came from the Kindertransport. So they'd escaped pre-Holocaust, managed to get out of Europe. And I assumed Ivor was part of this group. But actually, I'd been given a copy of his testimony, a book called Chicken Soup Under the Tree, by the man who published his testimony, Nigel Kanan, who's got a company called Lemon Soul. I'd had a meeting with him a week before, been given the book. So I already had it with me. And actually, on October 7th, I sat down and I read Ivor's book, Chicken Soup Under the Tree, and found out that he'd been in Auschwitz, Dachau, all of these camps, and was very surprised. And also the way he wrote was very visual as well. And just some context, as a Jewish Londoner born in the year 2000, I was always told I was the last generation to meet survivors. But I'd also grown up with the internet my whole life. I'd seen the rise of Holocaust denial online. And this thing that when the Holocaust happened, it was the older generation that didn't believe it and the younger generation that did. And now, with all the disinformation that exists, it's actually the opposite. So when I saw Ivor's story, I saw it as an opportunity to present a primary source testimony to my generation and actually do it in a way that would be slightly different and would be more engaging with my generation. For a Jewish audience and for a non-Jewish audience, I wanted it to be understandable. And so we set off to make it. And I got in touch with Nigel, who published the book, with the idea of turning it into an animated feature film. He really supported the idea. And what he did was he called Ivor Perl, the survivor, to see if he gave his approval of it. And I said, the one thing I don't have is time, so get on with it. And we got on with it. And it was probably exactly a year to produce because the first public screening was in Cannes at the festival there. And their deadline that they gave me was also October 7th.
So this was last year, just to put it on a timeline.
Oh yeah. So summer of
So at this point,
2023 into 2024 October. Yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, Ivor is already 93 years old or about.
Yeah, it could, may have been 92.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Fantastic.
yeah, it was a very intense year. Majority of it was doing lots and lots of research. Kate Leonard, the screenwriter for it. She's also my mum, by the way.
Wow. So you worked on the film with your mom?
Yes. Yeah.
That is fantastic.
And basically, Ivor's testimony. He's right. He was 12 years old, and he also wrote this testimony for his family. So he sanitized parts of it for his family. So what Katie did was she read also the testimonies of older survivors like Primo Levi and Eddie Weisel, just to get the adult uncensored story as well, so we could put this all together. We did 2 research trips. The first was to Auschwitz. I'd already been before on a school trip when I was younger, but I went there with the intention of taking Ivor's testimony, going to the locations and getting drawings, sketches, videos, and photos on the ground so that the scenes in the film would be spatially accurate. The right things would be in the right places. I also found there were 2 books that I got whilst I was there on that trip, and they were both from artists who had been prisoners in the camps and had drawn their experiences. So, for example, the Sonderkommandos, the job of disposing of bodies, and that was the job that Ivor's older brother had. But obviously, we don't have Ivor's older brother's testimony. Mm-hmm. So this man, David Ola, who was in the Sonderkommando, he drew his experiences after the war and was able to reference these sketches, and they became compositions in the film. And I actually thought it was quite important to credit him somehow, so he's actually in the film as the other figure in there. But another book I found was called The Sketchbook from Auschwitz, and it's a collection of sketches that a prisoner did, and we don't know who this person was, but these sketches were found under one of the barracks decades later, and it was really helpful for me, like just as an artist and trying to depict these scenes accurately. I didn't know whether capo was spelled with a C or a K, and I was able to reference a drawing specifically of what it would have looked like. And that's another thing that you would have seen in the end credits of the film, that every character in the film is based on a photo reference of a real person. Even the perpetrators are based on photos as well. I just didn't want them in the credit sequence because it looks like it's memorializing them. So it's only the prison.
Sorry, the who? The who?
The Nazis who are depicted in the film are based on photo references of those people as well. And we did a second research trip where we started in Munich and went to the different subcamps on different days. And we were able to confirm which subcamp Ivor had escaped from. We met the historian at Dachau, and he explained that in Dachau itself, there weren't fences that were breached, but there was a subcamp called Alec, which was built to provide slave labor for BMW. And he thought this was the most likely candidate for where Ivor was right at the end. And we were able to get aerial photos, prisoner maps, and it just fit Ivor's testimony so perfectly, and I was able to show him all of this and for him to confirm it.
So after you've done all of this research, you went back to Ivor and shared
Yeah,
everything that you found with him as well.
there was a constant back and forth, and my mum ended up volunteering at the Survivor Centre as well. So they have a thing called Yiddish
Beautiful.
Kiddush, um, where they sit around and have a Kiddush and speak Yiddish with each other,
Wow,
which is very nice. And there's a lot of survivors that we meet there.
that's
Um,
fantastic. And how did Ivor react to kind of this whole process? Because
yeah.
in a lot of cases, right, survivors, they don't speak about their testimony at all until much later in their life.
Mm.
Which of course Ivor's book also was published not that long time ago.
Yeah.
So how did that process feel like for him, seeing his story, obviously all this research that you've done, and kind of getting those details complemented with all of your work, and of course later to see it kind of come to come to the screen.
Yeah, I think there have been different stages. So
Yes.
right at the very beginning, Ivor was like, "What's this? It's come to this that the Holocaust would be presented as a Mickey Mouse animation," which is funny.
Yeah.
But I think the thing with animation is that it allows you to present more on screen than you could with live actors. So I wanted a 12-year-old to be able to watch the film, and the film has now got a 12A rating without me censoring anything from the
Mhm.
story, which you would have had to do with live actors. So we went along this process of making the film, and when we showed the first animatic to Ivor, he said he just couldn't believe that this is what he'd lived through. A bit later down the process of working on it, we asked Ivor for quotes, and he slipped my mum a note which said, "Now I know why I survived," which was a very powerful moment. And we weren't quite finished with the film yet, so it gave us the motivation to keep going with it. And because it was very intense to get it finished, especially because we were heading into the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the camps. That was 2025 was the 80th anniversary.
Wow,
Um,
that's amazing.
and yeah, and Ivor's a very humble man, and I think he really cares more about what other people think of the film than himself. And so when we've been taking it into schools and we've done a lot of screenings with non-Jewish audiences and finding people's reactions,
Hmm.
we did a screening in Romania, which I think was one of the big turning points in the project after the film was finished.
Hmm.
We were invited, it was a non-Jewish professor who was the head of Holocaust and Genocide Studies at the university in Cluj, and he invited us over to show the film. And we showed it in the university, and it wasn't just for his course, it was for the whole university. And
Wow.
we showed it, and immediately after, um, one of the students came up and said, "I think this will make a massive difference here." And then the professor who came to us afterwards said there were actually four anti-Semites in the audience that he knows from the university, but their reaction was a lot warmer and just not what he was expecting from those four people. So we have started to see the film making a big difference, and we're able to bring this back to Ivor, and it makes him pretty confident in the film's future and that we're carrying forward his story and his message.
I mean, it's even just to hear you talking about it, it's I'm getting emotional.
Yeah.
I think that this message again, so far removed as far as the times that's passed, um, and to know that it's being put out there and in such a meaningful way.
Mm.
What are some of the reactions that you've received in Britain? Because you're from London and Ivor is from London as well. What are some of the reactions that you've received back home?
It's all been very positive. I mean, I guess I need to think of different demographics and their reactions,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
we took it, even when the film wasn't finished and we were all working on it, we were taking it into non-Jewish schools with ages 12 and upwards, and just making sure that everyone understood what was happening exactly in the film. I think a lot of feedback I've heard is when they heard it was animation and puppetry, which I can speak more about the puppetry a bit later maybe. But they that like lowered their guards a bit to be able to watch the film. Whereas people who might think it might be too hard hitting, they might not enter the film in the first place. The puppetry and the animation lowers the guards, but actually it allows us to depict more than we would otherwise. So, yeah, people think that the animation and puppetry will make it less realistic, but actually makes it more realistic in a way. And then you hammer that home at the end with the photos of the drawings of the people and the actual photo references of the people, and yeah, you hammer home that this was real and this happened to real people.
Yeah, certainly. So tell us a little bit more about the process actually, because it's and I'm saying this as also an audience member and putting myself in the audience shoes when I've been rewatching this in preparation. It's your style is so unique. I don't think I've seen this sort of process before.
So it's kind of like a form of animation that I developed during COVID, during the lockdown. I'd always wanted my drawings to move, so I've been working as a cartoonist since I was 8. But that process of drawing the same thing over and over again, I never enjoyed it. But I realized that you could make a paper puppet, so you can make a flat drawing in card with hinges and stuff like that. And I was moving it in stop motion bit by bit. But what happened was I was making mechanisms and things to make that process of moving it and keeping it in place easier. And eventually, what I made was a whole body of a person, and I was moving it bit by bit. And then I realized, why am I moving it bit by bit when I can just push it instead? And so a 2-minute animation didn't take 4 days to do. It took 2 minutes to film, maybe a bit of time to work out the mechanisms and stuff. But that was in 2020, and it's 6 years later now, and I've learned a whole bank of different mechanisms and things, and it's all the part of this thing because I was at university at the time and I had to write about it. They make you write these long essays and things, but this is called pre-cinema, so it's the forms of moving image that we had before cinema existed, like
Wow.
ancient Chinese shadow puppetry, the magic lantern. I'm very inspired by this stuff, and
So this is your so basically you're fusing together your hand-drawn animation together with techniques that are basically manual. You're
yeah,
moving all
manual
the moving
ancient
parts and
kind of ancient techniques in a modern way. The way it actually worked in the film
Mhm.
was I built a multi-rig platform, so it was multiple glass layers laid on top of each other, and then the puppets were laid on the different levels, puppets and backgrounds.
Mhm.
And then the whole film was filmed on an iPhone from the top, filming down through the layers. And that composited everything together. So I used a bit of green screening in the film, but actually not as much as I would need to because the green screening was actually just putting things on a different glass layer.
Fantastic.
And we had this like mangle that I bought. I think it was from a printer somewhere. Attached it to the side of this rig, and then any long backgrounds could be fed through. And yeah, it was a really intense. Like the filming took about 96 days to film everything,
Wow.
and it was
96
not.
days.
It was actually a 9 a.m. to 4 a.m. Work day
Wow.
to get it finished.
That's longer than most feature films, so it sounds like a lot of small and moving parts and
Yeah,
it's just fantastic. It's so interesting to know that now in light of having watched the film. So I think,
all
you know,
physical. The other thing
Mhm.
is when the film was over, like I had all these puppets and they were like all over the place in my studio, and I finally boxed them all up into their things. But there's a whole exhibition there of stuff that exists. Every scene in the film is a physical piece of a quite good size, and so I've got it in storage now, but it all exists.
Amazing. So first of all, I just want to say that I will probably have to go and rewatch the film again, knowing a little bit more about the process, and I think our audience will as well. So are there any plans for an exhibition, you said, or
It's something
something with
we'd love to
those?
do. I mean, if there's interest, it exists and it can just be transported to wherever it needs to go.
That's
So,
fantastic. And I wanted to touch on another point that you mentioned briefly, about the demographics, the different demographics that
yeah.
you're able to reach with the film. So how did you find that the reactions have differed, to, what's presented in the film?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the reaction is kind of universal because it's it's a personal message and personal story. It's not political really. It's Ivor as a 12-year-old boy with his older brother looking after him, and Ivor always says his sort of message himself, because I think the Holocaust is a big subject, and I always feel uncomfortable saying this is what the message of the film is because it's such a rich subject that you can draw stuff from. But if I have to say anything, it's just what Ivor says to me, which is this is where hatred brings a society to, and love will get you further than hate. And these kind of sound like hippie things that wouldn't mean anything if it was coming from someone else, but from Ivor and his experience, it comes across a lot. And then also to find things in common with other people as well. And I think these are individual messages, and I think an audience receives them when they watch the film. So when I talk about different demographics, it's more about their willingness to watch the film in the first place rather than uh, the reaction afterwards. I mean, I did see when I was doing screenings, uh, the younger the person viewing the film, the more empathetic they were, the more they were able to relate it to their own family as well. And yeah, I think the deepest insights that I heard from people in screenings were from younger people, I'd say.
That's amazing. In the context of the times, modern times that we're living in,
Yeah,
um, it's just incredible that you're able to reach, people obviously, um, younger, much younger than us, and much younger than, a lot of, if you imagine a lot of, for example, the books and obviously the academics and the feature films and kind of the telling, most forms of telling the stories of the Holocaust, they're aiming at much older and often more educated,
yeah.
audiences. So it's incredibly important that, a film
I,
like
th-
yours exists.
I think part of it is it was identifying what tropes existed in the genre already and trying not to do the same thing. Just because I thought maybe uh, these things weren't as effective today with this generation as previous ones might be. And as I said, growing up with the internet, people do their research. There's a lot of misinformation out there, but they're not really they're not really following the news in the same way that the older generation did. And so I wanted to present the film not as telling people what to think or anything, but presenting it as a rich source of factual information, and you see the film and it's being informed by different sources that I've been looking at, whether it's those sketchbooks of the prisoners or the testimonies of Eddie Wise or Primo Levi, the rich source of photography of these people. The film is almost like it's packaging together a lot of different sources of information, and I think that's important. But I also think musically, like there's the trope of like violin music and things like this, and I think sometimes music like this can actually take you out of the experience, or it gives you somewhere nice to go when something horrific is on screen. And I think working with Aaron Baron Cohen on the music, I was talking about having an industrial. Did you hear that on your side?
Not very much, no.
Oh no, I said the word industrial, and then there was a big industrial sound
Yes,
outside the window.
exactly. Very
But
fittingly.
industrial and electronic music for those sections of the film, I thought
Mhm.
that was really important. No, it was great. The whole music side of the film, working with Baron Cohen, a very professional guy. He made this suite of music for the film called Survivor Suite, and it went through different stages, and I was able to intersperse it. But I've also got a friend called Penny Brown, who's trained as a cantor in Jerusalem.
Wow.
And there was a scene in the film which had a cantor
Hmm.
in it, and I was like, I know a
Yes.
guy, I know a guy who can do this. And what's strange is in the film, the guy is called Moshe Kraus, is the cantor that I based it on. And I told my friend Penny this, and he said, "Oh, I've met him. I met him when I was younger.
No
He was
way.
my teacher's teacher." So it's the same
Wow.
style of singing and everything. So
That's
a lot
amazing.
of there was a lot of weird synchronicity as I was working on the film, and things tied together, and people turned up at the right times, and yeah,
That's fantastic. And just to touch on a point that you've brought up, so like you said, you've kind of you've imbued Ivor's testimony and his story with a lot of um, additional information from different sources, but everything in this film, even though it's animation, is based on something that actually happened. It's all
yes.
a true story, true characters, and so
I
on.
don't like even down to the dialogue. When I was speaking with Casey about the dialogue in the film,
Hmm.
like 90% of that is directly from Ivor's testimony.
Wow.
Anything else is things where cinematically it would just make no sense if people didn't say the thing to move the story forward. But there is no dramatic writing of dialogue just for the sake of having that in there. It's all taken from that. Even the conversation, I think for me, the most creepy bit of dialogue is the dialogue between the two guards at Alec Carlsfeld camp when they're talking about you should have killed this group of people. Um, there's no space for them in this camp. And then he's saying, I don't want to be tried for murder when the war ends. And we'll find some room for them on the parade ground. It was just very strange to receive the German voice acting for this scene, to puppeteer it out and then recreate this sort of scene that probably these two people wouldn't want the world to hear at all. But it was existing on this rig in front of me, and it was just very strange.
Yeah, yeah, and there's so many moments in the film that and that's why I think it's so powerful, and I wanted to kind of underline it because there's so many scenes in the film and moments that while I was watching it, I was thinking, wow, I cannot believe this actually happened to this person, and he's
Mm,
here to tell us about it, you know.
yeah,
So this is again why it's so important to continue telling these stories. And you know, I personally thank you, and I know our audience will as well, for creating this beautiful representation of such an important story.
thank you.
And thank you again, you know, for allowing us to present it to our audience in ChaiFlicks. So the film will be available and on the platform in preparation and in commemoration of International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and it will stay on the platform for the time being. And we hope to be able to be a conduit to continue extending, you know, the reach of your creation and also these important messages that you've shared with us today. So thank you again, Zoom.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for hosting the film.
Of course.